Okay, let's go live to Washington, D.C. now and bring in Giorgio Cafiero, CEO of Gulf State Analytics. That's a geopolitical risk consultancy, and there is a lot of risk going on in this conflict. I want to follow up on the back of that report that we just had. Why is this war even happening? So we had a lot of explanations offered by several people within the US administration. They said that it was because of Iran's nuclear program. They were trying to remove that. They said it was regime change. It's also been suggested by the president himself that there was a threat to the United States security. And also we've heard that it was Israel's idea. Now, I'm going to suggest that this comes down to one of two things. Do you think that this is spreading of confusion to try and make people not see the reality? What is the real reason for this war, or is it incompetence?
It's a great question. You know, it's really typical of the Trump administration to be sending out messages that are contradictory, incoherent. We've seen this time and time again. I'm sort of inclined to think that maybe the Trump administration wants to be a little bit incoherent with the messaging if they are very clear about what they want to achieve, and then the U.S. is unable or unwilling to achieve that. That certainly puts Trump in a position where he looks very weak, and it looks as though he failed to achieve one of his administration's objectives. I think that ultimately the administration probably would like to see the Islamic Republic fall, or at least most people in the administration would like to see that. But we also know that Trump doesn't want the United States to get bogged down in protracted conflicts in the Middle East that are very costly to the Americans in terms of blood and treasure. Iran has certainly demonstrated its ability to really make the United States suffer and pay very dearly for its decision to start this war. So we might get to a point where the Trump administration ultimately decides to sort of freeze the conflict and eventually enter into some sort of a ceasefire with Iran, maybe not in the immediate future, but at some point after this war has gone on. And that may entail signing some sort of a ceasefire eventually with this regime in Tehran. So I think it's very possible that this confusion is very much intentional.
I wonder, is that for public consumption? Because I've noticed that Donald Trump very often says something and then says almost exactly the opposite, like a day or two later. So is there safety in that kind of ambiguity, in that if the public aren't sure why he's doing something, it's harder for them to criticize, and they'll be debating amongst themselves?
Well, I think there's probably a lot to say about that. I think certainly lack of discipline, incoherence, this is part of the explanation. But then I think at the same time, Trump certainly likes to keep everyone off balance, keep people confused, keep everyone in the media constantly speculating about what he actually intends to do. This sort of leadership with chaos is kind of Trump's style. I think we saw that in his first administration, and we've seen this also in this administration as well. But we should point out, though, this war is not popular with the American public. We see only a minority of the American citizens in support of this decision to wage this operation against Iran. And so I think Trump is certainly going to try to play the optics in a certain way to make it seem as though the U.S. is achieving its objectives, whatever they actually are, very quickly, and that this is going to constitute some sort of a win for the United States. Where I think Trump is getting himself into trouble, though, is he started a war that, well, he got to decide when the war started, but he's not going to be able to decide on his own when it ends. If he wants a ceasefire with Iran, that has to be a ceasefire that Iran agrees to enter as well. And therefore, even if he did not want to get the U.S. pulled into what might be a quagmire, I think it's very possible that he stepped into that.
Giorgio is the CEO of Gulf State Analytics, geopolitical risk consultancy. Let's dive straight into that. Geopolitical risk in the Gulf states. Do you think that Iran is deliberately targeting the Gulf states that are allies of the US? Maybe not even solely because there are US bases in some of those, but because by putting US allies at risk and in peril in the firing line, that might increase pressure on the US to end this conflict sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. I don't think we need to really speculate about that too much. I think that's really safe to assert as a concrete fact. The Iranian leadership knows that some of these Gulf Arab leaders have very close ties to Trump, and they have proven capable of influencing his foreign policy in the past. And so if Iran is able to foment chaos in the Gulf Arab states and to wage missile and drone attacks that really hit the organs of their economies, Iran is able to threaten these countries' economic health in existential ways. And Iran knows that the GCC states have next to no appetite for a prolonged war in the Gulf. And within this context, Iran is definitely putting the GCC states in a situation whereby they have much incentive to try to persuade Trump that the United States and Israel should halt their aggression against Iran immediately. I also think at the same time, the Islamic Republic is doing everything it can to demonstrate to the Gulf Arab states that hosting U.S. military bases on their soil does not create security. And I think Iran is Iran is taking a series of actions that are aimed at convincing the Gulf Arab states that their security will be advanced not by hosting U.S. military bases, but by actually becoming more autonomous and independent from Washington. If that's going to be the consequence, time will tell. I think Iran also needs to consider that there's a serious risk of these countries doubling down on their alliances with the United States to protect themselves from what they now see as an increasingly dangerous threat posed by Iran.
Giorgio, great to speak to you. Thanks for your analysis. My guest, Giorgio Cafiero, who's the CEO of Gulf State Analytics.